The purpose of this video is to review with you the genres and forms that Beethoven would confront in his formative years. You should get a score for each of the compositions listed on this opening page. You can download for free PDFs of scholarly editions of each of these works at imslp.org, also known as the Petrucci Library. The following slides contain analytical notes outlining important features of the genres and forms represented by these compositions. Think of the information presented in this video as a starting point. Make sure that you look up any terms you don't know and listen and re-listen to the music with the scores until you catch the salient features of the compositions. Each of Bach's 2 volumes of the Well-Tempered Clavier contains 24 preludes and fugues, one in each chromatic major and minor key. The famous C major prelude that opens the first volume has the typical improvisatory air of a prelude. Its arpeggiated chords allows for sustained harpsichord sound. Analyzing a fugue, such as the companion first fugue in C major, is a bit like searching a Where is Waldo drawing. A fugue starts with an exposition, which features the subject or main theme, and answers, which are either tonal or real. Once all voices of the fugue have presented the subject, the fugue continues with partial or full statements of the subject in different keys and using different fugal techniques. Some of these are stretto, diminution, augmentation, inversion, and invertible counterpoint. In the case of this fugue, Bach mainly uses stretto to vary the fugal entries. Note that he's able to write imitation not only at the 4th and 5th, but also at the 3rd, G and B, and 2nd, G and A. The move to the subdominant in measure 24 before the final dominant tonic close is also typical. The string quartet was a new genre of the classical period. Featuring 2 violins, 1 viola, and 1 cello, it was often referred to as a conversation between 4 intelligent people. That said, in the early quartets of Haydn, Mozart, and Beethoven, the first violin part predominates, with subtle dialogue with the other members of the ensemble. Quartets, like symphonies, are most often in 4 movements, having an opening fast movement, a slow movement, and a moderate-paced dance-like movement in the 2nd and 3rd positions, and a fast finale. As you can see from the outline of Haydn's string quartet in C major, opus 33, number 3, the ordering of the 2nd and 3rd movements could be reversed. Also note the use of sonata form in the first movement of all string quartets. Sonata form, the most important formal development of the classical period, would come to dominate several genres of music. If you haven't yet reviewed the dynamics of sonata form, now is a good time. The first movement of Haydn's string quartet in C major, opus 33, number 3, is a typical sonata form in many regards. It moves from the major tonic to the dominant in the exposition, plays around with keys and themes in the development section, and concludes with a recapitulation of the thematic ideas from the exposition in the tonic key. One unique aspect of this movement is the so-called false recapitulation before the more convincing recapitulation in C major at measure 108. This sonata form also has a coda, or a tail, that wraps up the movement. In the 6 opus 33 quartets, Haydn calls his dance-like movements scherzos, rather than using the more dated terminology of minuet and trio. That said, this scherzando sounds very much like a minuet and trio. It has contrasting A and B sections and a da capo return to A. The 3rd movement is, somewhat unusually, a sonata form here, with a written out and embellished repeat of the exposition. The final movement of Haydn's string quartet, opus 33, number 3, is in rondo form, meaning that it features a repeating refrain that alternates with episodes featuring contrasting themes and keys. Before we move on, a final note about the opus 33 quartets. These quartets were very well known in 1780s Vienna. They clearly influenced a set of quartets published by Mozart in 1785. In fact, Mozart dedicated his 1785 quartets to Haydn. In turn, Haydn's later quartets show the influence of Mozart's quartets. Additionally, as we will see in the next module, Beethoven learned to write quartets by making copies of Mozart's Haydn quartets. Beethoven's early opus 18 quartets show the signs of his careful study of Haydn and Mozart's works. We discussed the principles behind the solo concerto, its basic 3-movement fast, slow, fast form, and the importance of orchestral ritornellos as we looked at the music of Vivaldi. Mozart learned how to write concertos from J. C. Bach, who had learned how to write concertos from his father, J.S. Bach, who in turn had been a keen student of Vivaldi's concertos. As, by the late 18th century, sonata form had emerged as a powerful way in which to build musical tension and provide musical resolution, Mozart merged ritornello form and sonata form in his concertos. Many of these concertos were premiered at the Viennese Burgtheater, pictured on your screen. Most of the movements of Mozart's mature piano concertos are hybrids of ritornello form and sonata form. Ritornello form emphasizes the contrast between soloist and orchestra, and sonata form provides for large-scale dramatic tension and resolution. This form is sometimes called double exposition form or first movement concerto form. See if you can trace both forms in the first movement of Mozart's Piano Concerto No. 23 in A major, K488. As Mozart's own cadenza for this movement is still extant, most pianists today choose to perform it rather than improvising their own cadenzas, as was the norm in Mozart's day. The second movement of the Piano Concerto No. 23 is a contrasting F-sharp minor and 6/8 meter movement. It uses a song-like ABA form. As you listen, note the back and forth between soloist and orchestra. The finale to Mozart's Concerto No. 23 is back in its home key of A major and merges elements of ritornello form and rondo form. Note the abundant themes of this finale, as also seen in the first movement of the concerto. The merging of lyricism and drama in Mozart's concertos has led some scholars to argue for connections between Mozart's concertos and his operatic writing. Die Zauberflöte, known in English as the Magic Flute, was Beethoven's favorite of Mozart's operas. I say opera in quotation marks because the Magic Flute is actually a German Singspiel, having spoken dialogue between musical numbers. Still, it embodies many of the same innovations of Mozart's Italian opera buffa style, including three-dimensional characterizations, questioning of social norms, and large-scale planning, especially in finales. Finales are crucial dramatic moments in operas. In the case of an interior act, a cliffhanger finale motivates the audience member to return for the second half of the production. In the case of the ending finale, the composer must wrap up the dramatic conflict and, in Mozart's day, present the audience with the moral of the story. Mozart's large-scale melodic, harmonic, and rhythmic planning underscored these dramatic moments as never before. If your knowledge of the plot and characters of the Magic Flute is a bit rusty, you should review it now. As we will see, themes of good overcoming evil and of the disciplined seeker emerging victorious after enduring trials are central. One key to a successful finale is diversity, and Mozart's finale to the second act of the Magic Flute incorporates all of the opera's diverse characters. The stock characters such as the folksy Papageno and Papagena and the evil Queen of the Night and her collaborators reappear, as do the more three-dimensional noble and victorious lovers Tamino and Tamina, and their priest Sarastro. Supporting characters such as the three boys and the two armed men aid the seekers in their quest. Harmonically, the finale will run from E-flat major through C minor, F major, and G major before returning to E-flat major. The finale also uses a variety of tempos and meters. For this finale, Mozart wrote recitative, aria, duets, ensembles, and choruses that evoke musical styles from the counterpoint of a Bach chorale to the light-hearted buffa music of Papageno and Papagena to the more complex numbers of Tamino and Tamina. After comic relief and the demise of the evil Queen of the Night and her collaborators in Scene 8, Sarastro's accompanied recitative at the beginning of Scene 9 announces that, quote, "The rays of the sun have driven away the night, destroyed is the hypocrite's surreptitious power." End quote. The chorus of priests then praises the now consecrated Tamino and Tamina for having, quote, "pushed through the night." End quote. In a stately andante in 4/4 time, the chorus thanks the high priests, Osiris and Isis. Finally, the moral of the story is articulated in the final chorus. This is a fast allegro in 2 that declares, quote, "May the strong be victorious and crowned as a reward, beauty and wisdom with an eternal crown." Haydn's penultimate symphony, the Symphony No. 103 in E-flat major, was written during 1794 and 1795 while Haydn was in London. It is thus considered one of the 12 London symphonies. Symphony No. 103 in particular reflects the larger English orchestra. It features pairs of flutes, oboes, clarinets, bassoons, horns, trumpets, and then also timpani, in addition to the standard strings. A glance at the first measure of the piece explains the nickname gave to the symphony by its publishers. Like most symphonies, the composition is in 4 movements of the same types and tempos already discussed in conjunction with the string quartet. There are several aspects of the symphony, however, that are distinctly Haydnesque. First, the themes of the symphony are folksy in sound. Musicologists have traced similarities in Croatian folk songs that Haydn may have learned as a boy. Haydn's audiences raved about the catchy character of Haydn's themes. Second, showing off his ability to cleverly manipulate themes, Haydn's sonata forms in this movement and in this composition use only 1 instead of 2 or 3 themes. Finally, balancing out the monothematic first and fourth movements, the slow movement is a double variations form with 2 themes, as opposed to only 1. As one might expect, much of the music from Haydn's oratorio, The Creation, draws from the operatic styles of his day. Haydn, however, was very inspired by the slightly earlier oratorios of Handel. He was especially inspired by Handel's choruses, which, as noted in a previous video, integrated homophonic and simple polyphonic textures in music that was accessible for the amateur singer. Haydn's final public appearance in 1808 at a concert featuring The Creation was painted by Balthasar Wiegand after he attended the event. To Haydn's right you may see the young Beethoven. Do listen to the oratorio's forward-looking overture that depicts pre-creation chaos using the strongest dissonances of Haydn's day. This approach to dissonance, along with the contributions of Bach, Handel, Haydn, and Mozart to the fugue, string quartet, concerto, opera, and symphony, were the building blocks with which Beethoven would begin his music compositions. This ends the video about forms and genres of music before the time of Beethoven.